Hi, it's me, Jacqueline. Welcome to my channel. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and join me at Patreon. Link in the description. I walked in short steps and was asked to sit on a chair directly in front of the desk. Again, I took great care to sit down gracefully, but decided to keep my knees together as it seemed more professional than crossing your legs. Miss Roberts introduced the man as Mr. Fisher and said he was the area supervisor. He would conduct the interview and Miss Roberts would take any notes that might be required. He thanked me for attending, then started the interview. Now, Sally, Miss Roberts here tells me you've already started as a Saturday girl with us? Yes, last week was my first day, I replied. He smiled, then asked how I'd found it. I said it was very enjoyable, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted very much to go full-time. One of the attributes we look for in our staff is a keen fashion sense. Do you think you have the knowledge to succeed in a high-fashion environment? I looked at him and said I was very much into the fashion scene and added that I bought a fair proportion of my things from the shop. He looked at me and nodded. That's one of our suits you're wearing today, isn't it? Yes. He glanced at my boots, but he did not comment on them. He continued asking me a variety of questions on fashion and did I have any previous experience of selling to the public. I did what Miss Roberts said and answered honestly and as best as I could. He appeared happy with my responses, then asked, "Okay, Sally, one final question. What is the most annoying thing you notice about other women? In a fashion sense, I mean." Miss Roberts glanced at me as if trying to spur me into some ideal answer, but I was happy with the question and stated firmly, "I hate it when women don't take the time to polish their shoes. So many put on such pretty footwear, but they let themselves down by not keeping them in top condition." Mr. Fisher smiled and agreed. He asked how I would approach the subject with a potential customer. Again, I was confident enough to reply straight back. I'd make sure I offered her a Hannah Sadler quick polish kit when I sold her the shoes. She could at least use that to wipe away any grubby marks she might pick up when wearing them. Miss Roberts smiled, and I took it that my answer was a good one. Mr. Fisher asked Miss Roberts if she had any questions for me, but she said no. He then asked me if I had any question for them. I said no, and he stood up. "Well, Sally, thank you again for attending. We have another interview this morning, but we will let you know our decision as soon as we can." I stood up and he offered his hand. I shook it and he escorted me to the door. Back in the hall, I noticed a young woman sitting where I'd been earlier. She must have been the other candidate, and I managed a polite smile, even though I thought her bubblegum pink suit was a little over the top for an interview. Downstairs, the shop was now open for business. Cindy and Laura spotted me as I returned to the shop floor. Cindy met me first and was keen to know how it had gone. "Come on, Sally. How did it go?" Laura was now beside us, and I said either it went okay, but you could never be sure. I told them about the other girl, but they said not to worry so much. Cindy hugged me and said, "Now you get yourself off to the staff room and have a nice cuppa. We'll see you soon." I left them to continue serving and sat down in the staff room to wait. I felt like the condemned man. Time passed. It was 10:30 when Laura came in and said, "Miss Roberts wants you back upstairs right away." I got up and took my lipstick from the bag and quickly freshened up my lips. I wanted to look my best whatever the outcome. Mr. Fisher answered my knock on the door with a "come in." I stepped back into the interview room and was asked to take a seat. There was no clue from Miss Roberts what the outcome was, and I began to feel very nervous indeed as Mr. Fisher spoke. "Welcome back, Sally. Sorry to have kept you on tender hooks so long." I said nothing but managed a smile. He browsed through the paperwork in front of him, then looked up at me. "We've made a decision, Sally, and before I tell you what it is, I want you to understand that both you and the other girl were very, very good at the interview. It was not an easy choice to make." My heartbeat increased. He didn't appear to be dragging it out, but it sure felt like it. He fiddled with his pen before continuing. "But we only have one vacancy, I'm afraid. The other girl has worked in quite a few high street stores before, and she has a lot more experience than you." He looked for any reaction from me. I kept my nerve. "However, she has moved about a bit, and in a relatively short period of time. What we're really looking for at Hannah Sadler's is loyalty. Miss Roberts is of the opinion that you're not the sort of girl who would take advantage of our training, then skip off to work somewhere else. For that reason, Sally, I'm happy to offer you a position with the company." subject to the receipt of references, of course. I did not know if I should laugh or cry. I had been offered the job, but who would provide me with a reference? Mr. Fisher sat back, then asked, "I take it you still want the position?" Yes, of course. Good. Well, I'll get head office to prepare a contract of employment. Let's have your start date as Monday. He then said a new employee learning pack would also be sent to the shop for me. This would give details of the company benefits as well as the house rules. Mr. Fisher then said that I would be left in the capable hands of Miss Roberts, who would no doubt explain the procedures in more detail. Miss Roberts looked at me then said, "Sally, for today just continue where you left of last week. We'll have a proper chat on Monday morning." I got up and thanked them once more. Then I headed back downstairs to the shop to tell Cindy and Laura the news. Laura said well done, and Cindy added, "We can celebrate in style tonight." I removed my suit jacket and went to hang it up in the staff room. As I got ready to go to work in the shoe department, I noticed Mr. Fisher leaving and Miss Roberts came in to see me. "Well done, Sally. Welcome aboard." I looked at her before responding. "Thank you, Miss Roberts, for everything." She came over beside me, put a hand on my hair and said, "You may call me Karen now." All I wanted to do now was get down to some serious work. On Saturday, the shop was very busy. It seemed like everyone had come to town, and all of them wanted footwear of one type or the other. As I completed a sale, I remembered to ask the customer how long they had held our store card. Whenever anyone said they did not have a card, I did my best to persuade them to open one today. Thus, by avoiding closed questioning, I'd managed to persuade at least half a dozen women to open an account. Every time I sold footwear, I had to make a note of the item in a small receipt book. Although the accounts were electronic and stock would be reordered automatically, it was a rule of Miss Roberts, now Karen, that we made a physical note of our sales. One young woman said she loved a particular pair of high heels, but she had a pet hate for the labels that were stuck on the bottom of the shoe. The appearance of a label on the sole of a man's shoe would probably go unnoticed. For a woman, it could well signal the start of a minor catastrophe. A man would never understand what the fuss was about. It's just impossible to get them off with leaving at least some of the labels still on the sole. Why do they insist on fixing them on so securely? Her frustration was obvious as she handed me back the very high-heeled court shoes. I agreed with her that it was not nice to have everyone see a white sticky label on the sole of your shoes, and remarked to her that it doesn't matter how expensive your shoes are, it's very annoying. I have the exact same problem. I then lifted my booted leg to let her see that I too had a white label on the sole of my boot. She nodded and looked disappointed at having to pass on the shoes because of a troublesome label, but I wanted to make the sale, so I told her, "I'll try and take the labels off. These are such fabulous shade of red, and it would be shame if you lost out on them because of a stupid label." "That's very kind," she smiled in return. Now, removing sticky labels from the soles of shoes is not an easy task. And it is especially difficult when you don't want to break your newly acquired false nails in the process. I carefully peeled back the first label and hoped it would come off in one go. It did. I then took the second shoe from the box and hoped for the same result. But this time the label came only 3/4 off. I now had to pick at the remaining section of the sticker in order to loosen it from the shoe. Time appeared to pass in slow motion as I did my best to remove the sticker from the sole of the footwear. The young woman watched intently as I worked on the label. She appeared more nervous than I was, but finally, I handed her back the second shoe and smiled. "There, at last," I said, putting both shoes into the box before handing it to her. She thanked me for my efforts, and I told her it was part of the service and that, in my opinion, she would look fabulous in her new shoes. As she went to the cash desk, I noted the sale in my ledger book. As for the rest of my customers, some were obviously only trying, not buying, as Georgie had coined the phrase. Others needed a special pair of heels for a big night out, and I was asked many times to help recommend what style/color would go with a particular color of dress/outfit. I enjoyed it when they asked me for guidance on the type of shoes they should buy. One young lady was looking for something to wear for a day out at Ascot horse races, and I advised her that heels were a definitely out because she would lose them in the grass. I suggested a pair of very girly sandals with a wedge heel, and she said they would look gorgeous with the dress she still had to buy. Another woman tried on about 7 pairs of shoes, then left without buying anything at all. It would not have been half as bad had it not been for the constant trips back and forth from the stockroom. My department also included all handbags as well as the range of socks/hosiery that Hannah Sadler's stores offered. When I was not attending to someone, I busied myself with the displays, making sure all the shoes were sitting tidy. Previously, a handbag had never seemed important to me, but now I paid great attention to them. After all, they were now an essential component of my wardrobe. I especially loved ones with long handles that enabled you to swing your handbag as you stepped out. Smaller underarm bags were great too. Then you had the delicate little evening bags for those special nights out. I found myself wanting new bags as much as I wanted new shoes. The day was tiring, and when Cindy let the last customer out, it was well after 5:30. As a team, we were exhausted. Before we could retreat to the staff room, we had to get our ledger books balanced with the cash register. Karen made us wait until she had completed the money count. Then she looked up and announced our results. "Well done, Cindy. That's your best Saturday total for a long time. Laura, you did not do quite as well this week, darling, but still a good effort. Sally, also very good. You managed to open the most new account cards too. I think we're going to enjoy ourselves tonight." She led us off to the staff room for a well-deserved cup of tea. As I was the new girl, it was my job to make the refreshments, and as I filled the kettle, it was Laura who remarked, "It should really be champagne for such an occasion." Cindy took off the heels she was wearing and rubbed her aching feet before saying, "There's plenty of time for drinking later." Once again, the Saturday night disco loomed. Laura looked across at Karen and asked, "What time are we meeting Georgie tonight, Karen?" Karen thought for a moment, then replied, 10 o'clock at the disco. "So you all have enough time to get yourselves home and changed into your best dancing shoes." Cindy smiled and reminded us that we would all meet for pre-disco drinks in the cocktail lounge at 9. I was looking forward to the night out. It had been a most eventful week, and I felt letting my hair down was just reward for my efforts. Cindy then looked at me and asked, "What will you wear tonight, Sally?" I had not given it a thought and said so. Cindy shook her head, then said, "This is celebration time tonight. You must wear your most foxy frock." "I insist." Again I smiled and said I would make a special effort. Laura joined in the conversation and told me excitedly, "Don't you worry, Sally. I've got just the outfit for you tonight." Karen got up and went to fetch her handbag. She took out a small wrapped parcel and handed it to me. "This is a present for you, Sally. Don't open it right away. Wait until later." I took this small package from her and she glanced at Laura, then back at me. "Laura will help you." Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access.